Well, welcome everyone to this week's podcast. We're looking at the energy forecast for the week of the 20th to the 26th of December. Hi, Deni, how are you and what's been happening in your world this week?
Hi, Fee. Well, gosh, it's a big week this week, isn't it? Christmas week. My son's, I was just telling you, my son's 21st birthday on Sunday. And so it just feels like everything's ramping up. Suddenly the foot's gone down on the accelerator pedal. That's how it feels to me this week. It's all happening.
Yes,
What about you?
I totally get that too. And I think the numbers are going to reflect that this week as well. It's a busy week. That week before Christmas is always full on, isn't it? I've been desperately trying to finish off all of the things I need to do so I can spend some time with my granddaughters. And I'm looking forward to having them for a few days before Christmas. So that will be when I sort of relax and just enjoy the Christmas, the festivities and all that brings. I'm looking forward to
Well,
that.
it is such a festive time, but it's also, you can just feel all the family, the dynamics, the relationships, everything is like starting to boil.
Oh, it's all happening, isn't it? And of course, here in Sydney, particularly here in Avalon, where I live, I'm sitting under this kind of shadow of what happened last year when we got locked down at Christmas and we couldn't see our families. And that's just sitting always in the background of my consciousness thinking, oh, please don't let it happen again. And we're cautiously planning the family gathering, but there's just this little concern in the background that it might not happen.
Well, yeah, I remember that happened on my son's birthday last year on the 19th. And we had to cancel everything that we planned for his birthday. I can't see that happening this year. We do have some interesting dynamics happening astrologically over the next week. How that will play out on the bigger scene, I don't know, but I can see it happening in personal ways.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot. It's a big week. So I think I'll dive into the numbers and see where we're going, first of all, with those, and then we can look at the astrology. So I guess I've mentioned really a few times over the last few weeks that the energy seems to be ramping up towards the end of the year. And I think last week, Deni, you described it as a crescendo, as the energy just comes to this, I think you said just then, this kind of boiling point. And I think that's definitely what the numbers will speak to this week. So we're in week 51 of 2021. And in numerology, that means this is a universal 6-week. So 5 and 1 are both numbers of change. And 5 is more about, I guess, collective change. And 1 is about personal change. So this week, you're going to be experiencing change on many different levels and deepening your understanding around freedom, sudden change, and independence, which are themes that those numbers work with. And they bring those themes up to the surface. So, of course, we're in the final 2 weeks of 2021, which is as well a universal 5-year of change. And we know, I feel like I talk about it every week, this expect the unexpected, and we're sitting very much in this 5 energy. And then we're moving into 2022, which is a universal 6-year. So the numbers this week together really reflect the shift that we're going through as we move from one archetype into another archetype globally. And 6 brings in these influences of balance, but also extremes. And then, being in the extreme and coming into balance. So that's very definitely a 6 theme that we'll be working with. But when we look at the ways in which the energy of the 5 and the 1 archetypes really represent change, we can see that 5 is all about the unexpected and sudden changes, things that we don't see coming. And 1 is all about creating change in a more step-by-step conscious way. So this week, these 2 energies merge, and therefore the small conscious steps that you take are likely to create a shift on a larger scale that you're probably not expecting. these two numbers both represent action and movement, planning. They're, they're connected to the mental body. They're both very masculine in nature, that they sort of propel you towards something. So this will be another week of change on both a personal and, I suspect, a global level as well. So a key aspect of the 5 archetype is freedom, and a key aspect of the 1 archetype is independence. So when they surface together in this way, they influence you to really see your own potential in a more powerful way. They bring in a sense of, I guess, adventure and trying something new, and they activate the power of your imagination, which helps you to see new possibilities with more clarity. And they create a deeper sense of responsibility to self and also to others. And another key aspect of the 5 archetype is the ability to learn from your past experiences. So in a 5-year where those reminders have really been rising constantly, they allow you to make new choices for yourself. And this week really brings in a final reminder through this 5 energy that only you are responsible for the changes that you want to make in your own life. So it's a good opportunity, I think, to take a deep look at your past choices that reflect where you are now, and use the energy this week to adjust, to take you in a different direction if you need to. So a good question, I think, to ask yourself is, what is the same choice that I keep making that is keeping me stuck in the same place? And that could be with a situation that you're in, but it can also be with a relationship that you're in. And of course, these 2 numbers create, I guess, the 6 energy that this week brings. And this is going to give us, I think, a glimpse of the archetype that will be weaving its way consciously through all of our experiences next year as we move into a 6 universal year. And 6 represents the Great Mother. It's feminine in nature and holds the space for nurturing, for self-love, and for self-care. So in the midst of all that happens this week, you will be guided to find the time to look after yourself and maybe carve out more time for self-nurturing. And as I said earlier, 6 represents extremes and balance. So in a time when a lot is moving and shifting, you'll need to do more self-care to find your inner balance. So I would think about this today as the first day of the week. And as you look at the week ahead, make yourself a priority. Look at where you can give yourself the space just to be you, just for you. It's really another interesting week in the numbers. And, there's going to be a lot of change, a lot of direction, a lot of, again, looking at what's happened in the past and what you need to change to move forward in a different way. And I'm excited really to see what the astrology is bringing, because I know that this is a week, Deni, you've been kind of looking to all month. We've been kind of almost like we're coming to this point now. So I'll hand it over to you to see what you've got to bring in for this week.
Well, when you say I've been looking to this week all month, I'd say all year, because this is the week that Saturn and Uranus have their final square. And as I've said many times, there's been 3. This is the 3rd time of 3. Once in January, February, I think. Can't remember, it was January, February, once in June. And now this is the final square on the 24th, 25th. So perfectly timed with Christmas. That tension that these 2 hold together, the change maker and the one that just hates change and wants to stay the same. These 2 are squaring off for the final time this year. So that energy will be very, very big this week. And my feeling is hearing you speak to the numbers, is that Uranus and that place of really needing to shift something is where we're at. Uranus is sitting in Taurus, and Taurus is known as a sign that doesn't like change. So this is an uncomfortable place unless you're willing to allow something to shift and something to move. I'm going to start with my card because I think it speaks to where we might be needing to dive into this week, and it's the shadow as an archetype. So, looking at those places that we're afraid to go, that we're ashamed of, that we might want to push away, or we might want to ignore, to push down, to forget about. They're all the places that are asking us to look into this week. If we're brave enough to go into the shadow, then we can uncover some really beautiful gifts, but they take being brave in some way, facing some part of yourself that's uncomfortable. And we often don't like going there unless you're a shadow person like me with my Scorpio. I've got a very strong Scorpio house and I love going into the shadow. It feels very at home. I have Vesta in my Scorpio house, so it feels like at home for me. But for most people, I think going into shadow work is uncomfortable, and that's what's needed this week. We've just come off Sunday, so we're sitting in still the energy of the Gemini full moon. Venus has just gone retrograde and Chiron has gone direct. So this is a place where, and again, we're sitting in this place, but Chiron going direct is really beautiful and supportive. Chiron's the wounded healer. So it feels like this is a real opportunity to shift something, to shift like a karmic wound, something that's really been there for a very long time. Chiron's in Aries. So Aries is about the self. It's very personal. So there could be something around yourself. In fact, I would say Venus going retrograde, I've spoken to that piece of relationship or love or values being something that we're going to travel through for the next 3 months. When you're looking at the Chiron piece of this, where are you sitting in the relationship that's come up? So a little while ago, Venus and Pluto went direct, and then Venus went retrograde. So something came up in relationship. It could be a relationship with a family member. It could be a relationship that you have to your job. It could be a relationship, your closest relationship, or if you're not in a love relationship, something around what needs to be released in order to bring in the person that you want to. But it's so easy to look at the other. It's so easy to look at what's coming up, and it's all around how you communicate. It's easy to look at the other instead of looking within and finding out if this is coming up, rather than looking at an old pattern that's happening in relationship and it being about the other person. What is it about you that's bringing up the same pattern? And it might be a bit tricky to see, because it might be a frustrating person that always seems to be doing the same thing. So it's easy to just go, it's them. But right now we've been asked to look inside. What is it that we can do? We can't shift the other person, but we can shift ourselves. And it feels that it is in a place of how we communicate. It's a Gemini full moon that we've just been through, and Gemini is that place of other and how we relate to other, how we communicate. So looking at how you communicate, particularly over the next week in your love relationships, may be really beneficial to this week going a little bit more smoothly than maybe it does or has done in previous years around this season. So on the 21st, the sun enters Capricorn. So we're coming out of Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is kind of like a real fun, social, travel sign. And we're going into Capricorn, which is a lot more practical, a lot more cautious, a lot more disciplined, and a lot more pragmatic. So that kind of energy, bringing that kind of energy, it's going to feel quite different. It'll be a really big shift, and we're going out of fire into an earth sign. So with the earth signs, there is a little bit more of a actually doing bringing it onto this, into this world, rather than kind of being in your ideas or being in your being up in your passions or whatever. You're actually, it's a little bit more practical and doing, like, what do you need to do in order to shift things? Where can you explore in order for the relationships to go better? What can you do to shift that thing that needs changing in your life, that pattern that you're seeing? Like I said, it is an unfolding time. We have just started this Venus retrograde on the 25th, on Christmas Day. Actually, the 24th, we have the square, the Uranus Saturn square, and then the 25th, we have the Venus conjunct Pluto. So that's the second time they'll conjunct. So it's going to, those relationship issues will probably come up again on Christmas Day. So finding a way maybe of just bringing it back to self. What can I do? Because you can only do, you can't shift someone else. You can only shift yourself. So how can I approach these, whatever it is that might come up, in a different way? How can I communicate in a different way that might help shift? Over to you, Fee.
Oh, wow. Well, when you said that, I just had this image of Clive wearing the turkey instead of us eating it on Christmas Day. I just hope that doesn't happen. But I mean, I can so relate to those relationship issues. They seem to be so high, high and in our focus at the moment. We're definitely working through a lot.
Well, maybe if you imagine Clive with a turkey on his head, instead of reacting, it'll just lighten it up and shift something that way.
Yes, I was a really big fan of Friends. I remember an episode where that happened. It was funny. Yes, I'll do that. Well, I mean, when we were talking last week about the cards, and I said I'd drawn from the same deck as you, you mentioned that you thought these cards worked well together if there are two. So I've actually drawn the card this week myself from, get it in the right place, the thread.
Yes.
From the same deck. And I love this because this kind of really seems to, I guess, signify the way that we're being asked to work in the world at the moment. Following the thread is really the perfect reminder this week to be aware of what is rising as a sign or a symbol for where you need to go. And the threads can sometimes, I think, be overlooked because they're subtle, or they sit in the shadows, and that can be a place that is uncomfortable for some people to go. So you don't actually, I think, have to seek out the thread. In fact, I think if you try and do that, you don't ever really find it. So this card is just showing us really that the threads will appear, I think, in divine timing, and then you're being asked to follow them when they do. So just look, just look for them. Don't actually push to find them, but just notice them when they're there. So I thought that was a really beautiful card to work with for today. And then I went into the Akasha this morning, of course, to find out what the Akasha was going to offer for the listeners of our podcast today. And I was given this message. So there is more to do before you can rest. There is more to uncover, reframe, reveal, and release. And take heart from knowing that all of the work that you've done so far has prepared you for what is coming. And what is coming is going to be better than you can imagine. Your deep soul excavation is unearthing everything that has been buried, suppressed, and forgotten through many incarnations. Tilling the soil of your soul is a form of deep cultivation that prepares you to sow the seeds for the new way that is unfolding. And without this deep excavation, your roots will remain entangled in the past. By releasing what is buried, you breathe new life into your new way of being. So that feels really, I think, aligned to this energy that we're sitting in this week, and hopefully helps to support what we're all shifting through in this one of the final weeks of 2021.
Yeah, I just think that we've just got to know that the next week or week and a half of this year is a culmination of this year and what we've been through, and there's some really important work that we can be doing here that's going to make a big difference. And we probably won't even see until we look back on it how monumentous it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but often when you do look back, I mean, if you think about us going into 2020 and knowing that there was all these alignments and things that were going to happen, but no one could have predicted how monumentous that time could have been. And it feels like that in a different way right now. But we won't see it for a year or so, how big it is in shifting something.
Oh, definitely. I think this is going to be one of the periods of time where we look back and we say that's a time where humanity evolved and really changed. And as you say, we won't see that for a while, but we'll look back on this time as massive evolution. We've done this as humanity in periods of time in the past, but this is one of those times.
Yeah, I liken it to being in the goop stage of being in the cocoon, where it's a massive transformation and it's so uncomfortable when you're completely undone. And how incredible it is to be alive at this time and to know that we're at that piece of transformation that's going to send humanity in a different direction.
Yeah, and hanging on to that fact that we've chosen to be here at this time for that very reason, to create the shifts that we need to within ourselves and within humanity.
Yeah, they're big topics, and it almost feels like now we're like ho hum about it because we've been sitting in it. But yeah, maybe when we head into the new year and we start hitting different parts of it, it'll unfold, and we'll get a little bit more less ho hum about it. We're almost in that, it's kind of fatigue, right? It's that energy fatigue of having sat in this massive energy for so long. Particularly, that Saturn Uranus energy of just that tension is an actual tension. And I think when you sit in tension for long enough, it normalizes, and you don't realize how until it's shifted what it was actually like before it shifts.
Yeah, exactly. It's when when you're under great stress and then the stress goes and your body just goes, and you can breathe again. Yeah, very definitely like that. And, and I think this is a time to do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself and really carve out those pockets of time for self-care.
Yeah, and knowing what you need in order to be able to cope with the next week as well.
Yes.
How will I be able to move through it a bit more gracefully, and what do I need to give myself? I think you were bringing that up also, Fee, in your reading.
Absolutely. Yes, knowing what you need and then taking action to give that to yourself, and taking the time to give that to yourself. And then you will transition through the week much more easily, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So Merry Christmas, everyone. Enjoy the next week. We will be back one more time before the end of the year. And yes, I hope you all do have a beautiful Christmas.
Yeah, wishing you all the love in the world for the festive season.